Hey guys, Maniac here with GameAccess.net doing my 10th site podcast. And the subject we're going to be talking about this week is probably one of the ones that was probably closest to my heart because it was one of the first PC gaming properties that I ever really got into. And that is Jedi Knight by Lucasarts. Now, let me take you back a long ways, a really long ways. I got my first real computer in 1996. It was an early Christmas present. That whole year, 1997, was the year I spent learning computers inside and out, learning gaming and everything else. Obviously, I was playing games like Quake and stuff like that. And that's like another podcast for another story or for another time. But for Christmas in '97, I got a cool gift from my father. My father called me up, and I was using like a Pentium 1 133 at the time. 133 megahertz, okay? Just so you want to... I'm talking about megahertz back then. No graphics card, 16 megs of RAM. No graphics on that thing. It kind of, 3D graphics accelerators were out at the time, but they weren't required until around 98, 99 or something like that. Probably around 98. They really started getting required. And so what we had was my father called me up and he said, "Look, it was like I'm doing some, Christmas shopping for 90, this was 97, this was a year later. He's like, I'm doing some Christmas shopping. I see a whole bunch of different games for the computer. Let me pick you up one." And he said, "This would be a nice Christmas release. This is like a whole bunch of Star Wars games. This is done by Lucasarts. They bundle together like, I don't know, 5 or 6 games." He's like, "Would you be fine with this?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, what kind of games you got on there?" He's like, "It says Dark Forces, X-Wing, TIE Fighter. Oh, and it says it's got Jedi Knight on it." And I said, "Yes, absolutely. Bring it out. Bring it. Buy it. I'll play it. I totally want to play Jedi Knight. I've been hearing great things about it." And Christmas came, and I got the first of many Star Wars games. It's this pack of all the Star Wars video games. It was like I think the 4th LucasArts collection. Like they used to bundle together for holiday releases, and people don't do this really anymore. I wish they did. They bundled together like 6 games. Granted, some of them were kind of older games, but they were all good games. They had X-Wing, they had TIE Fighter, they had Yoda stories. They had all kinds of different stuff. And this was back when LucasArts was one of the dominant players in the PC gaming industry. They didn't stop becoming the dominant players in the PC gaming industry until their major shift to consoles around the time that the PS2, GameCube, and Xbox generation was just about to start. But by that point, it's like if you wanted to talk about gaming, everything was on the PC until those consoles were going on, until that console generation started. When that console generation started, LucasArts shifted its majority of all its development to the consoles and consoles only, and they pretty much left the PC in the dust and never really looked back. But I'm getting ahead of myself. This was back in a time when LucasArts ruled the PC, and pretty much everything that they made was a PC release, which was fantastic. As far as I'm concerned, that was like one of the heydays. It was probably their heyday, certainly. And so Christmas comes, and I see this great Christmas gift from my father, all these Star Wars games, and I look at the I got Dark Forces on there, I got Yoda stories. I actually did like that game a lot. X-Wing, TIE Fighter, all those great games. I love TIE Fighter, and I see Jedi Knight, and I see its expansion pack, Mysteries of the Sith. But it wasn't the full versions of those games. They were special demos that only included the first 3 levels of each game. And I was so disappointed. They weren't the full version of the games. I felt LucasArts gypped me. And I was so mad because that meant, it's like if I did play the game and if I liked it, then that meant that I was going to have to buy the game myself and probably, buy it direct or something. So I don't know. One night, I start playing the games, and I've already done a video where I talked about the Jedi Knight cutscenes and stuff like that. If you guys want to go through some of my files in my channel, you could probably find the top Jedi Knight cutscenes video I did. But other than that, I thought the Jedi Knight games were probably some of my favorite games of all time. Because it was Star Wars, I think, in its super, super, super heyday. Because this was just at the time, around the time, that Star Wars was coming back into the mainstream. I think what made it start coming really back into the mainstream, because Star Wars came out, it was huge when it was released, but that was like 30, 40 years ago. So, around 1994, Star Wars came back. USA Network started rebroadcasting the movies, and like specials and stuff like that. And I watched Star Wars for the first time. That was how I watched Star Wars for the first time. I had never seen Star Wars before. And I didn't even know that. You want to know how clueless I was about Star Wars? I did not know that Darth Vader was Luke's father when I saw that. Oh, crap. Spoilers. I had no idea. When he said, "I am your father," and he said it like, "I am your father." When he said that, I was taken aback. I really was. So just to make it clear how clueless I was about this. This was so Star Wars came back. They did the not the special edition VHS, but they did a VHS re-release. It was like the THX remastered VHS release. And I got those for Christmas, in '95. And I must have watched those tapes beginning to end about 1 million times. And you know what? I will never toss those tapes out. I know I've got them somewhere, and I will never toss them out because I know that they're probably never going to get released again in that condition. But that all aside, I was a huge Star Wars fan by that point, and I knew that the prequels were coming out, and that Lucas was working on them. I had no idea what was going to be involved with them, and of course, this was before we all assumed that they were going to be terrible. But that all aside, Jedi Knight was the game that came at the right time in the right place. In me, it was just perfect, a perfect release, just absolutely perfect. So I start playing the first levels of the Jedi Knight discs and the sampler discs that I got, and I'm loving every second of it because the sampler discs were different than the demo that got released on. If you go to like some of the websites, you'll probably find a demo for Jedi Knight, but what you'll find is not really that demo that I played. The demo that I played was special because it was literally the entire first 3 levels. The demo that was released that was available for download was, I think, the 8th level of the game, and there were no cutscenes, or at the very least, if there was a cutscene, it was just like a clip show or something like that. This had not only the levels, but also the cutscenes that went with the levels, all the cinematics and everything, and they were great. I mean, I already raved about how great I thought the cutscenes were for Jedi Knight. I had to get my own copy, and a couple months later, when I had my birthday, this was a few months later. It's like I couldn't just get this game. A few months later, I had birthday money, and I ordered it direct through Lucasarts. And if I had one complaint, and you guys will probably see this. If you haven't, in the photos that I'm going to be posting along with this text video. If I had one complaint about the version that LucasArts sent me, it was that it was a later re-release version of the game itself, which meant that it didn't have the original box art for Jedi Knight. I happen to think that the original box art for Jedi Knight, which I don't think legally I can post on this site, so I can't include it. I can't include it with the with this, but I can't just. But if you just go searching for it, I'm sure you'll find it. If you go searching online for like a picture of it's a really cool picture. It was an artist rendering with the hero of Jedi Knight fighting the hero of the main villain of Jedi Knight. It's a really well done scene. It's a really well done. I liked it. It was a classic piece of video game art. The version of Jedi Knight that I had was a later release, which was bundled with its expansion pack, so it saved me a few dollars. I didn't have to pay for the expansion pack, of course. That just had Darth Vader on it. So it was really, it was kind of disheartening in that respect. So, hold on, I'm just going to open up a balls while I while I talk about this, because, I'm talking about my PC gaming roots. Why not just open up a balls? So, this all aside, I finally get my own version of the game, and I start playing it. And what I think I like so much about the fact that the demo let me sample the first 3 levels was that the first 3 levels of Jedi Knight, you have no Jedi powers. You're not a Jedi in those beginning parts. You actually, of course, according to, for those of you who haven't played Jedi Knight, the plotline is such. You play as a rebel mercenary after the fall of the Empire. He's the same character who was from the original Dark Forces video game called Kyle Katarn, who's like originally an imperial smuggler, an imperial guy, and he basically went to the rebels instead because either he changed his ideology or he just was interested in money, that sort of thing. And along the way, he becomes a loyal rebel. And what happens is that with his help, basically in the back of everybody's mind, with his help, he contributes his part to the downfall of the Empire and the rise of the Rebel Alliance to the new Republic. So that's all backstory on Kyle. Jedi Knight was more of a personal story about Kyle himself, because Kyle, I thought, was a very interesting character. Here was a character that by all means was bad, but actually had all good ideals. His heart was pure. He was light side aligned. But he did, he did bad things because they were a means to an end kind of thing. And I like that. I like that. And what he was trying to, reconcile that. He was trying to, especially as time was progressing, especially as the game started, here was a guy that was trying to reconcile for his past. I liked that. I thought that was great. And I thought that Jedi Knight, when it came out, was the logical, extension of that, because he has to basically, now at this point, this is a personal story about him where he's going after the person who killed his father. When he finds out that the person who killed his father wasn't Dark Jedi, which was not, they were using that term, Dark Jedi. The term Dark Jedi was, nowadays they would call him a Sith. But back then they called him Dark Jedi. You know what? I prefer the term Dark Jedi to Sith, because Sith, as far as I'm concerned, refers to something that doesn't exist anymore. In the Old Republic it existed, probably. You can use that in the Old Republic. But nowadays, even with modern stuff like that, they use the term Sith for just bad Jedi Knight, for Jedi Knights that follow the dark side and stuff like that. When in fact, in Star Wars canon, the only 2 Sith that were considered Sith were Vader or the Empire. I'm sorry, the Emperor. There was no one else. And so I prefer the term Dark Jedi when it comes down to that. So that's just my personal stuff. So they call him a Dark Jedi, and he basically had to, along the way, follow the path of his father, follow the path of friends, the mentor of his father, the Jedi Master Ron, and become a Jedi Knight, just to become powerful enough to fight it. And the cool thing was that I really liked the story. And what really sold me on the game was that cutscene, the cutscene that I considered number 1, that I marked as number 1 on the top 5 Jedi Knight cutscenes. I think it was top 5 Jedi Knight cutscenes video I did. This at the video at the end of chapter 3. That was the last cutscene that was included with the 3-level demo. I did not include the cutscene for the 4th level, that preceded the 4th level, and I was really disappointed about that, because here I am basically leaving on a cliffhanger. They left me on a 3-level cliffhanger. I wanted to know what was, did he find a light? Did he find a lightsaber? Did he find the location of the Valley of the Jedi? Because that was kind of cool. It's like, not only is this a personal story, but the whole galaxy is at stake. Because he finds out what this bad guy is after is the Valley of the Jedi, an ancient Jedi burial ground, where this power is just so intense he could destroy pretty much the entire galaxy with this thing, just with a thought. So, not only did you have a personal story, but you had a galaxy-wide story. You had all kinds of cool zany characters like 8088 and Jan and everything else. And you had these other, you had all these different Dark Jedi that were following this main Jedi. So you had almost like the 7 Samurai and stuff like that, which was something that was inspired George Lucas originally when he made Kurosawa was a huge inspiration to George Lucas when it came down to him writing the original trilogy. I think that's the reason why R2-D2 and C-3PO have such a predominant bit in the opening of the movie. So I couldn't wait to play it. I was glad I got a copy. Although I wish I had the original. I was glad I got a copy of Mystery Sith, but I wish I had the original artwork. But I guess I was trying to pick that up too late. By that point, the game had been re-released a few times, and there were new covers. But again, I didn't like the Vader cover. I mean, I did like that they had the extra game included with the manuals and everything else, but I did not like the Vader cover. So, getting off that now. Also, the game had some great multiplayer. It had some fantastic multiplayer, which I will not complain about whatsoever, and I'm really happy about. I played through Jedi Knight. Got a rare hint book, which I have not been able to find. I think I have it locked in a trunk somewhere. But I've been looking for it like crazy for a couple of years now. I haven't checked the trunk that I think it's in, because it's buried pretty well. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to. I picked up a hint book, which had a really cool interview with the game director, where they were talking about just backstory in the game, like what was the connection to how did Kyle's father find the Valley of the Jedi? How did Ron figure into all of this? And the truth is, I was like, I'll reveal this to you guys now. According to the original game director, when interviewed about this by the hint book people, according to the backstory of the game, Jarek was always looking for the Valley of the Jedi, as was the Jedi Master Ron, who Jarek killed and became kind of Kyle's spiritual Jedi mentor in death. And the cool thing was that he never found it. Rom never found it. And but the thing was that somewhere along his travels he came across Morgan Katan, who had been a rebel for many years, and was and basically had for the rebels been just basically checking star systems, checking planets and stuff like that for resources and things like that. And came across the Valley of the Jedi, not knowing what it was. When he met Ron, and Ron was talking about what he was seeking, Morgan told Ron, is like, I know exactly what you're talking about. I know exactly. I've seen it. It's like, I know where this valley is. Ron tells him, don't tell me where it is. Please don't tell me where it is now. And the reason why was because he figured if he knew that Jarek could get it out of him. So, that's what happened. That's basically what happened. Obviously, in the beginning of the game, Rom is killed. Morgan is already dead by that point. But they had the I think they killed him without yet knowing that he had it. Rom was the one who pretty much, using the Force that Jarek was able to figure out that Rom had that Rom knew that Morgan had it, but Morgan was already dead by that point. I'm kind of rambling on a little bit, but the whole point was that Morgan had the location, and Rom, along with his meeting, sensed that Morgan had the power of the Force inside of him, but realized that he figured that whatever son that Morgan had, if Morgan was to have a son, his son would be even more powerful. He could sense that. Now, there was some retconning and stuff like that about whether or not that Morgan Katarn, Kyle's father, was in fact a Jedi Knight. No one really agreed on that. I mean, I believe that the guys who developed the second Jedi Knight game, the Jedi Outcast game, believe that Morgan was in fact a Jedi Knight at some point, because at one point, he knew in death, he knew the spiritual Jedi, the Jedi apparition trick. He would have had to have been a Jedi, or at the very least powerful with the Force to have known how to do that. And but the early stuff that I read did not mention that Morgan Katarn had been a Jedi. It was just Rom, and Rom didn't teach Morgan the Force for his own protection, basically. Although he assumed that Kyle would eventually become a Jedi. So, after all that backstory, I played through the game. I love the gameplay. The level design was very challenging because, like that, it was still going in a respect at the time where level design was kind of like puzzles, where you had to navigate through mazes and stuff like that. And that was tough. That was kind of tough. So that's kind of partially why I got the book, because it's like I had to figure out my way through these levels sometimes in order to just get through them. but it's okay. I still enjoyed it. I still enjoy the story. I still enjoyed all all the Dark Jedi that were part of it. If I could name who my favorite was, my favorite Dark Jedi's Dark Jedi battle. I like the Gork and Pick battle because here you had two Jedi's that were fighting. I'm sorry, two Dark Jedi that fought as a team. One very small and one very big. And the funny thing was that they had different sized lightsabers, but they were like best of friends, and they were only shown in CGI, which is kind of interesting. Also, even in the live action cutscenes, they were only depicted in CGI. But I like them. Oh gosh, who else did I like? I like the Saris fight. I like the scene before the Saris fight in particular, on the light side. Which also was included with the Jedi Knight cutscenes level. Stuff like that. So, I finished the game. I started playing through Mysteries of the Sith. I didn't enjoy it as much. I mean, Mysteries of the Sith was a different type of game because Mysteries of the Sith was an expansion pack, but it kind of took place afterwards. By this point, you had the New Republic, you had all this other stuff going on. It showed Mara Jade, who actually more recently has probably gotten very, very popular. But actually, the main character of Mysteries of the Sith, the Jedi Knight expansion pack, was not Kyle Katarn at all, although you played as him, it was only very briefly. The main character of Mysteries of the Sith was actually Mara Jade, who in the expanded universe became a very, very, very major character, actually. And I don't know if anybody knew this, but it had been established in Mysteries of the Sith that Mara Jade was trained in the Jedi arts by Kyle Katarn. I didn't like Mysteries of the Sith as much. I thought it was a much harder game than Jedi Knight was. I also thought that because like in the last couple levels on Dromund Kaas, weapons didn't work. You could only use your lightsaber on Dromund Kaas. But I've been told actually by friends that have played the Old Republic online that Dromund Kaas is in the Old Republic. So I'm like, when they're explaining this stuff to me, it's kind of cool that everything that was in Mysteries of the Sith made it into the Old Republic. I really thought that was kind of cool. So I'm like, I remember Dromund Kaas. Where have I played that? Oh, it was in Mysteries of the Sith. And I started describing it for Mysteries of the Sith, and I was told that was exactly how it was depicted in the Old Republic. So I'm happy about that. It was still a fun game. Again, I would not call it as good as Jedi Knight. It was, but it was still a damn good game. I don't know how I feel about how it ended, because basically what happened was the reason why the game switched from Kyle to Mara was because Kyle went to investigate some ruins some Sith ruins that he believed was on Dromund Kaas. He felt very, very connected to it in a major way, and like he almost felt like he had to go investigate them. And the game switches over to Mara. She does some things to help the rebels out, and then she goes looking for Kyle. Kyle at that point had fallen to the dark side, and she basically had to bring him back. She basically had to snap him out of it, and that's basically how the series ended. It ended at that for like. And there was like for years no talk about any sequels. There was no talk about it at all. And everyone thought, I think a lot of people, certainly me, but a lot of people wanted more Jedi Knight, wanted another Jedi Knight game. And LucasArts, at that point, years were progressing. 99 came around. The first prequel movie came out. The Phantom Menace came out. And LucasArts was continuing to release games, even releasing games for the PC, like the fantastic game Episode 1 Racer, for example. And then there was, of course, the Phantom Menace game, which I actually didn't mind that much, but it wasn't great. By that point, I had later upgraded to a Pentium Celeron 500, Pentium Celeron 500 megahertz with a GPU. So I was, by around 98, 99... I had upgraded because by that point you had to upgrade your systems. By that point you needed at least like a 133. No, you needed like a 288 minimum by that point. By 98, you needed a 288 megahertz with a graphics card and 32 megs of RAM. The system I had was GPU, 500 megahertz, and 64 megs of RAM. So that was pretty good for a while. It would not be good for long, but it was pretty good for about 2 years. And So I was able to play the 3D graphics games and stuff like that. I picked up Episode 1 Racer. I picked up The Phantom Menace. And all I wanted was another Jedi Knight game. And then LucasArts announced that they're working on this game called Obi-Wan, and it's going to be for the PC. This was around the time when LucasArts finally did make the switch to consoles. The console generation with the PS2, the GameCube, and the Xbox One had finally started. And LucasArts announced a huge volley of games for all the platforms and nothing for the PC, except for this game that they were working on called Obi-Wan, which they promised was going to be for the PC, and it was going to be like almost like a Jedi Knight, the Jedi Knight version of Episode 1, basically. Like, you'd be playing as Obi-Wan Kenobi through the course of Episode 1, but the gameplay, the controls, and everything else would be as if you were playing a Jedi Knight game. And everyone was looking forward to that, especially the PC guys, because we wanted another game. Well, Obi-Wan got canceled. Star Wars Obi-Wan never made it to the PC. It got canceled. They canceled it. And we had nothing. The PC gamers got nothing. We got a shitty port of a terrible game. I think it was, what was it? It was a sequel to, I can't remember what the damn game was called. But it was like the sequel to Rogue Squadron. No, it wasn't the Rogue Squadron sequel. It was something. It was terrible. And I think it got like less than 10% review on PC Gamer and PC Gamer magazine. I think they gave it like a 9% or something like that. And the game was terrible. And we got that, and that was originally intended for the Nintendo 64 game, the Nintendo 64 console. And I think maybe out of pity, because there was nothing coming to the PC lineup, they ported that over because Obi-Wan got canceled. But I mean, I couldn't tell you how heartbroken a lot of people were over that. So then I don't remember if it was around. It might have been E3 2001. It might have been E3 2000. I think it was E3 2001, because if I remember correctly, Obi-Wan got canceled January of 2001, I think. And the Episode 2 games were not yet out, and Episode 2 was another year away. Although they were talking about that there were going to be Episode 2 games, and they were probably going to be console exclusives. But, there was no talk about anything until E3 of that year. And LucasArts every day announced a new game in their lineup for over the course of like a week. One of the first games that they announced in the E3 lineup was Obi-Wan, but it was going to be for the Xbox. That was disheartening. They also announced Star Wars Starfighter. I think they announced it that at that E3. That was a good game. I'm not going to slam that game. That was a good game. Actually, maybe Starfighter came out. I can't remember. I think maybe Starfighter came out earlier. So there was that. And then on the last day where they were making the announcements, the very final announcement that they announced, and I think this was 2001, if I'm pretty certain this was E3 2001, was Jedi Knight 2, Jedi Outcast. And that not only was there going to be a new Jedi Knight game, it was going to be using the Quake 3 engine, and it was going to be made by Raven. Now, Raven at the time was probably one of the best first-person shooter companies out there. They had done Soldier of Fortune, which was an absolute fantastic game. And when it came down to major sequel releases and stuff like that, Raven was getting them. They had done Star Trek Elite Force, which was, as far as anybody was concerned, usually like the first good Star Trek game, although I like Star Trek Borg a lot. Raven was the company where you could take your property and it would actually deliver a good game. It was guaranteed practically. And they were good with the Quake 3 engine because they had already used it with Elite Force by that point. And I think they were also in the process. I don't remember if Soldier of Fortune 2 came out at that point also. I don't know if Soldier of Fortune 2 came first or if Elite Force came out. No, Elite Force came out. I don't know if Jedi Knight came out around the time of Elite Force 2. I'm sorry. I'm confusing this. Soldier of Fortune 2 was using the Quake 3 engine as well, but I can't remember if it came out before or after Jedi Outcast. I think it might have come after Jedi Outcast, actually. But they were developing Soldier of Fortune 2 on Quake 3. The first Soldier of Fortune game was on the Quake 2 engine, of all things. Okay, so after all of that confusing speech, you could not have had me more happy. I was emailing my high school teachers saying, "Oh my God, take a look at this. This is like so awesome." I had a Latin professor I used to email all the time. Good guy. Won in Jeopardy. Won a nice sum in Jeopardy. And really smart guy. And so he and I used to email each other back and forth. This was back when nobody emailed. And yeah, I told him about that. So just to say how excited I was telling my teachers about this kind of stuff. And oh gosh, I was so excited. I didn't even care about Obi-Wan anymore. I didn't have an Xbox. I didn't plan on getting an Xbox. I was really interested in this Jedi Knight game. Over the course of that year, like a course of a year, I'm hanging on literally everything I possibly can. Any type of information that LucasArts releases, any type of little tidbits and stuff like that that's coming out. I wanted that game. And a year later, I got it. And you know what? It was fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. I loved every freaking second of that game. The graphics were absolutely just great. They were probably the best that Raven had done by that point. Obviously, they would later surpass it, but it was, I think, the best that the Quake 3 engine had done by that point. They did get better. Quake 3 engine has since been surpassed technologically, but by that point, that was really great. Loved the Jedi battles in it. Really, really did. And the things that I liked about it was it kind of really did have parallels to the first Jedi Knight game, in that here you had Kyle basically trying to redeem himself after what happened at the end of Mysteries of the Sith, re-seeking his powers of the Force in order to combat another Force-powered threat. It was a story of revenge. It was a story of, he literally was a Jedi outcast. They tied into the expanded universe where Luke Skywalker's Jedi Academy played a part in it. Luke Skywalker himself made an appearance in the game. Billy D. Williams appeared in the game as Lando Calrissian. That was awesome, because I love Billy D. Williams. I think he's like one of the coolest guys ever. Yeah, he was in that game. It was his voice, it was his appearance. They got him to play Lando. Lando did make an appearance in that game. And it was Billy D. The controls were great. Really, really like the saber controls and stuff like that. It worked fantastically. And like with and I liked the ending a lot. I mean, and this was back at a time when, endings were still pretty terrible. But the whole concept was that nothing can really match a real trained Jedi. And that was like something that was going on, was that this bad guy wanted to create his own type of Jedi unnaturally and use them as an army, basically, in mass, to basically conquer the universe. And the truth was that when finally put up against a real Jedi, even the few Jedi that Luke Skywalker were training, there was no match. A real trained Jedi could defeat these fake Jedi, these unnatural Jedi. So it was really, it was really cool in that respect. And in the end, Kyle gets very powerful, and he uses his power in order to save the galaxy. Awesome. And in the end, he gets a girl. He gets the girl at the end. I thought that was kind of cool, too. I won't spoil who, but, it's like he gets the girl at the end. I like that. It was cool to see the Valley of the Jedi again. Then that was another thing I liked about it. It really made some respecting calls to the original Jedi Knight. It didn't feel like it was a complete ripoff. It just made those respected calls. It did its own story, but it definitely harkened back. It's like, yes, this is the second Jedi Knight game. All the stuff that you wanted to see back, all the stuff that you loved from the first game, we're going to respect that. And Raven did. It was great. It was fantastic. I don't know if I would have spent as long as they did without force powers. I mean, you literally go through at least like 2 or 3 different planets before you actually get your first force power. And after that, the game gets really hard. It gets really, really hard. So yeah, there was that. But other than that, it was so much fun. You know, it really was so much fun. I was so happy that they made it. And not too long afterwards, Raven said that they were making one more Jedi Knight game. And it was going to be called Jedi Academy. And it was going to be a game about a new character that's basically joining up with Luke Skywalker's Jedi Academy. And he's being trained, or she's being trained, by Luke Skywalker and Kyle Katarn. And also that you'd be able to create your own character from scratch. You could pick their race, you could pick their appearance, you could pick their clothes, you could pick their lightsaber. Yes, you could have different, you know, it was going to offer for the first time both double-bladed lightsabers and dual lightsabers, which, while had been modded into some the previous Jedi Knight games, I remember back when Episode 1 was just about to come out, everybody wanted to put a double-bladed lightsaber in Jedi Knight, and I think the modders did it. I think the modders were able to get it to do it. For the first Jedi Knight game, and I'm fairly certain that if they were able to do it in the first Jedi Knight game, they probably did it in the second Jedi Knight game. They probably modded it into the second Jedi Knight game. But Jedi Academy actually was the first game, as far as I remember, that featured playable like a dual lightsabers and stuff like that. Really, really awesome. In fact, actually, if I remember correctly, you also had different stances and stuff like that that you could use in both Jedi Outcast and Jedi Knight. Jedi Academy. And I actually talked to a friend of mine at the time, an old friend, that liked to study how people held swords and stuff like that. Like, he was always a fan of, like, he studied swords and sword fighting and stuff like that. Real sword fighting with, like, not just fencing, but I mean sword fighting with swords that could literally take your head off. And he liked comparing how characters held swords in games and movies because to basically how it would work in reality. And he liked the holding of the swords. He liked how Kyle held the swords in the different stances in those games. I thought that was kind of cool because you know, when you chose a stance, like they had like a light, a medium, and a heavy stance, and light stance being faster but doing less damage, a medium stance being slightly slower than the fast stance but doing slightly more damage, and the heavy stance doing an extreme amount of damage but taking quite a while. So, you know, it being and leaving you vulnerable. And so I like that. And they kind of brought that into Jedi Academy, but they kind of changed it up a bit, whereas that you could, how do I put this? You could either learn a new stance, which was your pick, or you could basically get either a double-bladed lightsaber or 2 lightsabers. And I actually, in Jedi Academy, preferred having a second lightsaber, because what happened with that was that you had more, I thought you had more options with a second-bladed lightsaber. You couldn't throw, having 2 lightsabers, I thought you had more options. With a double-bladed lightsaber, you couldn't throw it. You could just ignite just 1 lightsaber instead of using 2. But with 2 lightsabers, actually, I felt that you could do 2 slices at once, when in fact with a double-bladed lightsaber, you can only do 1 slice at once from one time. But that all aside, that's how I played. I played with the 2 lightsabers. However, the problem with the second Jedi Academy game was that they left it on a cliffhanger. They left it with a possibly canonical, possibly non-canonical ending. Because at the end of the game, you basically chose, does your character go with the light side or the dark side? Now, you had that choice in the first Jedi Knight game as well. But you didn't have that choice in Mysteries of the Sith, and you didn't have that choice in Jedi Outcast. And the reason why was because of they had to tell a continuous story. They had to have a fixed story. They couldn't change it, because they were they were building off of that. And as far as I know, the only ending that was canonical to Jedi Knight was the light side ending. The dark side ending, although cool, was more of an elsewhere story ending, and I don't think they considered it canonical, because Mysteries of the Sith picked up from where the light side ending left, and Jedi Knight 2 picked up from where the the Mysteries of the Sith picked up, basically. So that all aside, there hasn't been another Jedi Knight game. I mean, I know that there was the Force Unleashed games and stuff like that, but those were not the same. They were not the same. In fact, I didn't even like the second one that much. The second Force Unleashed game that much at all. They upped the abilities of the Force powers, and they brought in new concepts and new character types and stuff like that. But I didn't like the Apprentice in the Force Unleashed. I didn't like the character of the Apprentice. I kind of liked where they were going for with the story of the first one, where they were trying to tell the story of the birth of the original Rebel Alliance, even though technically that had already been shown in a deleted scene in Episode 3, which they should have kept. I totally would have respected, but I didn't like the Apprentice as a character, and I certainly didn't like him very much in the second game. You could have said I thought he was kind of interesting, and I thought he was kind of, oh God, what's the word I'm looking for? I thought he was kind of relatable in the first game, but by the second game I thought he was just not. And plus the second game wasn't very long either, and they charged full price for it, jeez. So, I really hope that LucasArts since that, there hasn't been any Jedi Knight games. In fact, there really hasn't been any games by LucasArts, period, other than the Old Republic. I mean, LucasArts made, just by themselves, a hell of a lot of games. They used to. They released tons of games at once, for all different types of platforms. Back in their heyday, they were releasing PC games all the time. There'd be several different types of games coming out every year. And they wouldn't be sequels, they'd be all new types of games. Sometimes you get a sequel, but for the most part they would be just, a new unique spin on the Star Wars license. Where are all the Star Wars games? I mean, yes, you got Old Republic. Yes, I heard it's testing really highly, but it's an MMORPG. I'm not going to play it. I'm not interested in paying a monthly fee to pay a game. Give me something. Give me something else. Other LucasArts properties, since we're talking about, various other LucasArts properties that I liked the KOTOR properties. I actually beat KOTOR 2. Thought it pretty much resolved nothing. But I did beat it because I was such a fan of KOTOR 1. You want to know how crazy I was? Because I loved KOTOR 1 so much, I actually beat KOTOR 2, hoping that somewhere I'd actually get an ending. A complete disappointment. It took me 30 hours to beat KOTOR 2, and I beat it in 4 days. So do the math. And the reason why I know this is because that's what my save said. I couldn't even believe that I'd spent that much time playing the game, but it took me 30 hours to beat KOTOR 2, and I did it in 4 days. Yeah. So I like the KOTOR games. I'd love to see a KOTOR 3. I really would. I'd love to play that. Gosh. I really don't know what else to say. LucasArts, I just implore you, get back to just get back to your heyday, your PC heyday. And I would love, actually, if you wanted to, let's say, do a complete package or something like that, where you bundled together some of your old games or started reprinting some of your old games and cool stuff. Now, most of your modern games in the last 5 years at least, I got, or the release, But, I mean, like your older games, like your games from your super heyday, like 15 years ago, 16 years ago, stuff like that. From, 92, 93, up to 99, basically. I'd love to see more. I'd love to see those games get reprinted on disc format. I know you could probably get them if you really wanted to on Steam or something like that, but, I thought that'd be cool. So, that's basically Jedi Knight in a total respect. I thank you guys for listening. I hope you've learned something. I hope I wasn't too odd or too crazy when it came down to what I was talking, about. But those are my personal experiences when it came down to Jedi Knight and stuff like that. And it's just been so great getting to tell you about this. And no, I don't think that any other game series that LucasArts has released comes close to recapturing that feel of Jedi Knight. That you if LucasArts wants to make another Jedi Knight game, they should just make another Jedi Knight game. I think they should have that. They certainly have that opportunity. They've done it well before. I really would like for them to just do it again. I don't, I was like, if they want to make another Force Unleashed game, that's great too. I'd probably give it a look, but it's not Jedi Knight. It's just not. Nor is KOTOR. KOTOR, another great game. I loved KOTOR 1, but it wasn't a Jedi Knight game. I want that back. So, until next time, guys, thanks for listening. This is Maniac with GameAccess.net. Over and out. Take care.